Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to embark on a really fascinating journey. It's almost like this cartoonish, epic clash between two massive, completely opposing paradigms. On one hand, we've got the dogmas of the past, and on the other, the radical possibilities of the future. And they are literally facing off right here, right now, in the present. In a world that honestly feels like it's just boiling over with complex challenges, there are two entirely different frameworks vying to design what our tomorrow looks like. On one side, you have the ultimate top-down institutional vision, and on the flip side, a radical, grassroots, bottom-up awakening. So our goal today is to impartially explore the source material behind these two paradigms and show you the exact blueprints they're proposing for our future. To kick things off, we really have to ask the ultimate question. Who controls our future? Right now, societal tension is building up like a bubbling cartoon volcano. The kind that is just shaking and ready to erupt. We're feeling the pressure of economic strain, massive technological disruption, and constant global crises. It's created this environment where absolutely everyone is looking for an escape valve. But the real question is, who gets to build that valve? Do we just hand the blueprints over to global institutions and massive corporations? Or do we, the individuals, start forging our own independent workshops to manage all this heat? To really ground this modern tension, it actually helps to look back at some historical warnings. The sources bring up this brilliant, albeit terrifying concept called the phalanstery. It was famously depicted by the Hungarian writer Imre Madacs as this hyper-rational dystopia. Just imagine a world where the pursuit of total, absolute efficiency means people completely lose their individuality. Everyone wears the same clothes, and you basically just become a mere number in a grand overarching system. You can also think of the 19th century truck system, where factory owners didn't just control your paycheck, they literally controlled your housing and your groceries too. It created this inescapable loop of absolute institutional control over everyday human life. So these extreme examples from the past, they're actually the perfect lens through which we can view the competing visions of today. So let's move into section 1, the Great Reset, focusing on top-down institutional control. In the book, COVID-19, The Great Reset, co-authored by World Economic Forum founder Klaus Schwab, the institution's stance is outlined very clearly. They essentially view recent global crises as a fundamental inflection point. To them, it's a huge opportunity to manage the intense steam of all this societal tension through expanded state power and deep public-private partnerships. It is a highly structured, top-down attempt by the global elite to essentially rewrite the social contract. The goal is to fix the system's broken parts by harnessing the power of giant institutions to create a new, highly controlled kind of stability. But, as you might expect, critics are pointing out some pretty severe hidden risks within this top-down model. While the Great Reset promotes things like stakeholder capitalism and corporate social responsibility, there is a very real warning from critics that temporary health and safety measures can incredibly easily solidify into permanent surveillance capitalism. It operates a lot like a modern cartoon panopticon. The sources highlight the massive danger of biometric data harvesting, where institutions could theoretically monitor not just where we are physically, but even our emotional states. Plus, there's a huge concern that new, stringent regulations, while claiming to protect workers, might actually end up eliminating the autonomy of gig workers and freelancers, basically forcing everyone into a rigidly monitored, unavoidable corporate structure. The sources cite historical and technological analysts directly to really drive this point home, specifically pointing to the concept of punitive solutionism. This is the stark warning that those in power might use vast, sweeping digital surveillance infrastructures to monitor our daily activities, punish any transgressions, and eventually even manipulate our political views. It's essentially the ultimate modern realization of that hyper-rational phalanstery we talked about earlier, a system where technology doesn't just serve us, but actively manages us from above. Which brings us to section 2, the Great Giving Back, and the idea of a bottom-up radical awakening. This is where we see the exact antithesis of the reset. It's absolutely crucial to understand the radical difference between these two approaches. The Great Reset? It's like corporate managers deciding to completely restructure a massive factory from the executive suite and just demanding that all the workers adapt to the new layout. The Great Giving Back, on the other hand, is like the workers themselves stepping entirely out of the factory, launching a DIY 2.0 movement, and deciding to just build their own independent workshops. It demands a clean slate and actively seeks to dismantle the institutional vulnerabilities that make individuals dependent on centralized power in the first place. The Great Giving Back platform lays out a manifesto of core tabula rasa, or clean slate demands. First up, it calls for Pentecost 2.0, a collective, totally grassroots awakening. It aims to completely end what it calls false capitalism and all those institutionalized double standards that so heavily benefit massive monopolies. It even targets the physical world, demanding the absolute eradication of planned obsolescence. You know, when products are purposely designed to break just so you have to buy them again? Yeah, they want that gone. Ultimately, this movement is all about returning reality and morality back to the people, aiming to break up the traditional holy trinity of power between church, politics, and the economy. Think of this approach kind of like a software update. The Great Giving Back views foundational social achievements, like the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights, as humanity's core operating system. But right now, that OS is seriously lagging. Instead of letting a few developers at the very top force a patchy, restrictive update onto all of our devices, this movement argues that the users, we, the people, must actively upgrade our own social software for a new era. And that leads us perfectly into Section 3, individual and social responsibility, or what we can call the physics of the future. So, what actually determines which of these realities take shape? Well, it really comes down to undeniable physical laws. Let's look at the current state of the world as a strict law of physics. Tension, much like a pressure difference in a pipe, will inevitably equalize itself. That is an absolute physical certainty. The pressure has to go somewhere. But how that equalization materializes, whether through a chaotic, destructive explosion or as constructive power, depends entirely on our attitude and our responsibility. The World Economic Forum operates under this illusion that it can tightly cap this explosive process, lock the tension inside a rigid machine, and just use it to drive their own engine of transformation. But here's the thing, life always holds an unpredictable X factor. Past experience proves over and over that rigid, top-down control shatters under unexpected pressure. True resilience against the unknown can only be achieved through genuine, horizontal, human collaboration. And we can actually see real-world proof that old, pragmatic models often protect individuals way better than complex modern systems. Just look at the European wealth paradox, using the wealth Gini index. You'd probably expect Western Europe to be far more equal, right? But it's actually the exact opposite. In Eastern Europe, because of mass debt-free home ownership after the regime changes, wealth inequality is incredibly low. People actually own their own bricks and mortar. Now compare that to Germany or Austria, where half the population rents. That leads to high wealth inequality because people just aren't accumulating assets. Or look at Denmark. It's highly financialized with massive mortgage debts, resulting in extremely high paper wealth inequality. This objectively proves that simple, tested models of individual ownership are a much stronger shield against systemic vulnerability than being a dependent renter in a highly managed, complex economy. Which leads us to the core, strictly pragmatic mantra derived from these sources: don't fight the old, build the new. If the tension of society is absolutely going to equalize anyway, we shouldn't waste our energy just violently smashing the old cartoon factory to pieces. Instead, we must take the sturdy, tested bricks of the past to build a resilient, brand new structure. And this is where we have a radical social responsibility to act. We must take that sizzling, boiling energy of today's frustrations and consciously, actively invest it into constructing new, parallel systems. Do not completely destroy the old frameworks, those proven, functioning values like the debt-free home ownership model we just explored, or even just basic, untracked human interaction. Those are incredibly valuable. We need to integrate those time-tested elements into our new system as helpers. This is all about dropping the heavy dogmas of the past and adopting a strictly pragmatic, solution-oriented mindset to actually realize the possibilities of the future. Because ultimately, the equalization of tomorrow's tension isn't up to some global forum in Switzerland, and it isn't up to a faceless system. It is entirely up to your individual attitude. So the final question you really have to ask yourself is this: as the pressure continues to build, which system are you investing your daily energy into building? Are you feeding the top-down machine, or are you collaboratively building your own resilient future? Think about it. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Stay curious, stay responsible, and I'll catch you next time.